the city and several members of the audience. So this is the Kendall County Fair Oaks Transportation, Bernie Fair Oaks Transportation Study Committee, and we've got a pretty full agenda today. So we're going to step through this pretty smartly. I don't have any opening remarks other than to say that we're going to review a schedule here pretty soon, and we'll be wrapping this up soon, a month or 6 weeks. Opening remarks, Bob?
No.
Gary, any opening remarks? Rankin? Sharma, good to see you back.
Thank you.
Jeff Carroll?
No, sir.
What's going on at the city? Anything noteworthy?
I'm just back from vacation, so I'm playing catch up.
Okay. John Kite? Bryce? Ben Eldridge? Bobby?
Negative.
The French Riviera, Northern, anything? Okay.
You're John.
All right, we're at a quorum now. First item is considering the minutes of June the 21st, and I believe that Erica's not with us today, but she's going to do this by reviewing the minutes. So you should have the minutes of of the meeting of June the 21st in your package in front of you.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of June the 21st. Any objection to approving those? Minutes are approved. Next item is public comment. Opportunity for people in the audience and people online to comment. I think we'll go to the people online first at this point. We have 3 people joining us there, Alex Rudd, Denise Deaver, and Wanda McCarthy that I can see. Denise, you have a comment. You got 3 minutes.
Can't hear.
Denise, are you?
She's unmuted.
We haven't started your clock yet. Are you there, Denise?
Do we need the sound person? Jeff?
Okay, Denise, keep your hand up,
Huh?
but we'll come back to you in a minute. Maybe they'll get the technical problems resolved. Ms. Rudd, are you available?
These students, and of course, Lourdes.
She's muted.
You're muted. Okay, well, we're going to go to the people in the audience, and maybe we can get those technical issues resolved. Anybody in the audience like to make a comment? Commissioner Elkins, thank you for being with us today. Is it a slow day at the courthouse, or?
Slow.
Oh, okay.
You left, and so I said, well, let's go.
I didn't mean it when I said there's free beer over here. Anybody else? Okay. Denise, do you still have your hand up?
Let's see, she's texting me for some reason.
Okay.
Then I was unmuted and speaking.
Yeah.
She said,
Can we get somebody else
Can we get someone
that's
else
on
to
the Zoom just to test the sound? Wanda or Alex, will y'all unmute yourselves and see if we can hear you?
Tom's trying.
she's unmuted. And did you say
Tom's still muted.
Tom, are you trying to talk?
Is it possible our audio isn't turned on? As in,
That's
like,
what I was
That's what
asking,
we're
trying to figure out.
Them are muted,
Isn't there
everybody.
like a way to like kick it over there? I saw Mike Rowdy do it. And he did it from my
I will
computer.
break it. I'm not touching it.
Yeah. That's the best way I can help it. Get my hands visible.
Okay, while we're working on getting those things resolved, I want to mention a couple of things. One is our schedule for completion. It looks to me like we've got, we're meeting today. We're going to review the Trails Subcommittee's presentation today and a few other little items. The next meeting will be August the 2nd. At that time, I'm hoping that we will be able to adopt the Trails Subcommittee report. At that time, we will distribute a near final draft of the entire report, and we'll begin the selection of projects that we have moved forward into the buckets of long range, short range, and other projects. And I think we will continue that effort on into the meeting of August the 16th. And at that time, depending on how much progress we've made, we may also be able to adopt the final report on August the 16th. That would put our final meeting, just to wrap up any loose incidentals and just other things that we poo-poo and I forgot, on August the 30th, which is the third meeting of this month. And then just as a sort of backup, let's schedule a meeting for September the 13th. Maybe we won't need it. Maybe we can all go to Dodging Duck and take some inspiration there. So that's the schedule. I hope that we can stick to it.
This is a point. In the past, where we've had 3 meetings in the fifth Tuesday of the month, we've gone to the first Tuesday of the following month, would be September 6th, as opposed to September 13th. That is the day after Labor Day. This comment gets us out
Let's cross that.
1 week early.
This isn't a transportation intended metaphor or pun, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it, okay? But thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Ms. Deaver, they believe that they have the problem fixed. So if you would unmute yourself and see if you can get started.
Yes, sir.
There you are. All right, your clock is starting now.
Thank y'all for showing up on this hot afternoon. Appreciate it. I have from the last meeting when I couldn't hear you guys. I can hear you excellently today, so thank you. I would like to once again ask about Dr. Vinnie's video presentation. We do have a contract in process to have it transcribed. And we also would like to know if there's any way that we can procure, with his permission, of course, the PowerPoint presentation that he gave. Otherwise, we'll have to do snapshots to make the whole entire thing work.
So you're making arrangements to get that transcribed? And are you asking us to?
I'm losing you guys. I can't hear you at all.
Are you asking that we incorporate the transcription into the report?
Yeah, I lost you guys completely. I couldn't hear anything you said. I apologize.
Can you type it in the chat, maybe?
I can't.
Northern's over there. Sorry. Then we come sit over there, Northern.
Can the other people hear us?
Wearing all the hats.
As usual.
Can any of the other people still hear or speak?
Wanda McCarthy said she can. No, Wanda says she's completely lost sound from the meeting.
So it sounds like they're getting transcribed, but she wanted this
Right.
slides so they don't have to take pictures. We have those, don't we, or do we?
Well,
She was asking that question.
Let me see if I have anything. Has this presentation been put on the website?
That's not northern.
I'm digging out of a big pile from being gone for 2 weeks.
okay, I'm going to anticipate that she's asking us to somehow incorporate that into the report. the transcription and the PowerPoint slides, because I think that was the request that she had made earlier.
So the key is to get the PowerPoint slides if we don't have them.
I think, I mean, they're accessible on the YouTube video.
Yeah, she's saying she doesn't want to take screenshots. She wants nicer
Right.
ones, and I can see if I can get those.
My question is, do y'all want that incorporated into the report? I mean, we can add it as an appendix, but I will tell you, this is the essence of the report right now, and we can add more pages if you want. This doesn't have executive summary in it. It doesn't have graphics in a lot of it. I mean, in as much as it's available on YouTube, I don't know, how do y'all feel about it?
I think it's available online. Our website, we've established, will exist for at least another 2 years. YouTube will exist as long as YouTube exists. So it's out there.
I also feel that it's out there. One, the first version of the narrative that we had referred to it quite a bit. The second version, we compressed it, and there was a lot of redundancies, and sure, it's important, but nothing really hangs on that report. We can proceed with it. I think we made our statement with what's in there, and they could find it on the website if they really want to get into that detail. If not, we'd have to print out some things that are on the trail report, and this document will just get too big.
I thought we had one time just a link to it and just leave it there. If they want to follow it up, they can.
I don't know what that link would have been to where and how eternal that was. The issue that was raised before that I think does deserve some airtime here is the 2-year lifespan that we're hearing about for the website. Our website's loaded with invaluable data and information. And are we saying in 24 months that goes away? I think we all collectively feel like that is self-defeating for what we've been doing here. I don't like
We will have to find someone to pay for the domain. That's, as long as someone is paying for the domain, currently it's being paid for by the city, I believe. And so at the end of 2 years, we'll just need someone to pay for the domain to keep it alive.
But if you
It's
have a
about
link,
$12 a year, and then there's the hosting.
The Wix, I'm paying for the Wix right now.
Is it part of a different like
Yeah,
account?
and it's not as cheap.
No, it's
not
not.
very cheap.
It's not.
Which I will let that die at the end of the committee. It will not do anything other than slow the website down.
Well, if his name is mentioned in there as given the presentation, if they're interested, they can dial up his name and find the presentation themselves.
and I can't speak to how long the website will be kept up or who's paying for it, but if we're going to, regardless if it's a link, we could always put the HTTP address, and they can spell it out and put it, research it themselves, right? Let's just post it. They can enter it themselves.
Ben, I'm going to ask you this as a Civil Nature Center guy. Is it possible that, I mean, this seems to be really very basically affiliated with the Civil Nature Center as it relates to your area and that cavern situation? Is this something that Cibolo Nature Center, as a backup, at the very least, be willing to maintain that particular video?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually already on our YouTube site, for one thing.
Okay.
And then we could embed it somewhere on our website if need be, but it'll be on YouTube. That's the main
You can find it now.
You can find it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I accessed it, so. I believe we have, is there anybody objects to just providing a link?
Before we make a final decision on this, I honestly don't know that we fully understood what Ms. Devers was even saying.
correct.
And so
So here's what I think she's saying. She's saying she's getting George Venny's presentation transcribed, and she would like to embed slides.
I
in
never
the
heard her
actual-
say she wants it in the final report or anything about that. And so until we can hear back from her, like we could be she could be sitting there rolling her eyes right now, or we're going down a complete wild goose chase here. So
She can't even hear you, so
right.
that's what she's saying. She could hear Don. So Don, if you say anything, apparently
So
she
I
can hear into our microphone.
All right.
So Don, I don't disagree with making a link to it, but I do think that we owe it to Ms. Devers to hear what she actually said, in case we might have misunderstood her.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that we preempt her question. I'm just anticipating that. How are you doing, Sheldon?
Oh, just holding together and trying to make it as best as possible we can for y'all. It's it should be working correctly now.
Denise, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can now. We're gonna. We've tied our IT guy to the podium here in case it fails again. So,
Okay.
we're gonna go ahead and restart your clock and let you make your statement again.
Okay, so my statement was a continuation from the last meeting. I had said that I didn't want us to lose the website, nor did I want us to lose the valuable information from Dr. Vinny's video. And it's very hard for that video to have a life inside of any of the information that's going to be reported as recommendation by the committee. That is not going to work because, as we all know, those paper documents just will not, be able to import that information. So we've hired a transcriptionist to transcribe all of the information from the video. What we will be missing is the PowerPoint presentation, unless we can gain a copy of that with permission from Dr. Vinny, or we'll have to do snapshots of the video to try and incorporate that. What I'm wanting is this not to be lost from the committee. I felt like the committee as a whole understood what he was saying and was on board with his ideas of preservation. So that was my point. And the website. I kind of heard you guys talking about the website, but we lost you, so I don't know what you said exactly. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Deaver. Just to give you a brief response, the YouTube video is on the Cibolo Nature Center's website. And I believe, according to Ben, that they intend to maintain it there.
It's on our YouTube channel.
Okay, YouTube channel. But I don't mind asking Dr. Vinny if we could give you access to his PowerPoint presentation, or let you, augment your transcript with that, or you can ask him. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know that we have any rights to that.
Just as an aside, there's a lot of free video transcription services that are automated. They're not perfect, but we use them at Parks and Wildlife a lot. YouTube has a built-in one,
Correct.
Denise. So,
and you can make your own edits and credit.
yeah, so you just take it and
So
go through
Denise,
and
if you
scan.
want help with that, let me know and I can guide you through that process. This is Bryce.
So this is Bitsy, but the question then still remains, Denise, were you wanting this submitted in the final report, or is that just something that we may?
I would like it to be like part of, you had referred to possibly an addendum or, attachment, reference to, that this will be a reference. And we've already paid for the transcription. So that's where we're at. We already put the dollars out. If that does fail and it's not adequate, then I will ask for help. Thanks for offering, everyone.
Okay. We did have some discussion about whether we wanted to add this as an appendices. My general sense, this isn't the final decision, but my general sense of the committee's position is a link to the YouTube video would be adequate because our report already is in the neighborhood of, well, it's like 3/4 of an inch thick. You know, it could be an appendix. I don't know, do you know how many pages the transcript is?
Now, we were able to hire the person that's going to do this, and they're talking, a couple of weeks to even get it completed. So we don't know, but certainly can come back and tell y'all as soon as we find out.
Okay, well, let us know, and we will cross that bridge after we cross Gary Louis Bridge, getting close to the end of this. But thank you for the offer to do that, and if you need help accessing the YouTube channel, I think Ben Eldridge can give you some help on that.
Happily.
Anything else, Ms. Deaver?
Oh, no, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks for the offer, Ben. I think we got a hold of it through you, whether you knew it or not. Appreciate it. Bye.
Pickpocketing me.
Anybody else online that would like to make a comment?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, Ms. Rudd.
Oh, I just want to let you know I fixed the technical issue, and I don't have any comments now, but thank you for checking in so many times. I can hear everyone, though. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rudd. Ms. McCarthy or Mr. Adelstein?
I have no comment, Don. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Lance Kyle.
Lance Kyle, 226 Cascade Caverns Road. Good afternoon, committee members, Bob and Don. I just want to make a few comments in support of the transcription in addition to the report. I don't know how many pages it's going to be either, but I do hear that they're going to be using a transcription service in Austin that all the big law firms use. So it's going to be a transcription that is very official with a high reputation imprimatur on it. Regarding the eternal aspect to some of these videos, we don't know if YouTube's going to go out of business tomorrow, And, I'm remember all those, what were some of those, predecessors to, some of these other, online companies and stuff? MySpace, is that even around anymore? But anyway, there's also degradation of signal over time. And I don't know how many people have IT backgrounds in here, but over time, this stuff starts to demagnetize and fragment. And I believe, I don't know if there's any attorneys in here right now, but most of these videos in depositions and such are usually, converted into a transcript. So I agree with Ms. Deaver. This is probably a good idea to add to the report for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Anyone else in the audience like to make a comment at this time? Okay, if not, we will move on. You'll have an opportunity at the end again. A couple of items of unfinished business from last meeting. We had two projects that were called to our attention that didn't seem to have any resolution. One of those was the Kreitzberg extension. I believe it was project ID number 33. Is that correct? The other was the idea that Mrs. McCarthy had forwarded to us or offered to us as a member of the public at this meeting, which got captured as number 115. This was an elevated roadway that basically replicated or was followed the path of Herf Road over to IH-10. And so I think that Bob and I and several others remember that we rejected both of those. But I've asked Northern to pull those up, if you can, Northern. And we will discuss those just for simply audit trail purposes. We want to make sure that we discuss these and give them due consideration and that we document the disposition of those two ideas. 33 is the Kreitzberg extension.
So we didn't talk about this one?
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
I do remember that we definitely put it off as not necessary at this time, or possibly ever.
Yeah. We no-goed because of it being running traffic through a neighborhood, and we've done the same for others, where one type of traffic just going through another neighborhood just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's a residential road, known to be at that, similar, I forgot the other ones, but further north of Bernie, there's some very similar, there's probably 4 projects that we no-goed as well.
Okay, so you do have a sheet on that, Northern?
I've got that on, do you have it on your screen?
No, I don't have it on my screen.
Oh, I do.
Over there, or here.
Okay. All right, I got it. Okay, so I don't hear any statements in favor of keeping this on. I've heard several comments about rejecting it. Is there any objection to rejecting Project 33, the Kreuzberg extension?
That's the one that I still think is important for not only safety, mainly, because otherwise you've got, 12 miles? You got to go 12 miles back into Bernie to go back around. So like if you want to go to the intersection or the school out there, you're going to have to drive 24 miles, where if you could cross the Guadalupe and go up Thomas Road to 3351, to me, it's a safety deal.
Okay.
And it's never going to become a farm road, I can tell you that.
Okay, so we have one objection according to our rules of consensus. If we have an objection, we'll wind up voting. So at this point, anybody has any comments in favor of or opposed to including 33, you'll be recognized. Gary? Steve? John? Anything else you'd like to say about?
Well, it's something that when you look at mobility, that's right there, and it's safety, mobility, and, the fire department could get there, ambulance can get there quick, because they've got it now in, I want to call it Boulevardy, Bergheim.
Okay.
They've got fire, EMS, and so I think it's important to keep. It doesn't have to be a extremely 100-year bridge. It can be a 25-year bridge, and it would probably go underwater once every 2-3 years. But I think it's important that we have the mobility ties to everything.
Okay. Bryce? Ben?
I just think, given the really pressing congestion and transportation issues in this town, I can't see how an area this remote rises up to the top of the other stuff we're talking about. So I would vote against it.
Northern? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to reject this, please raise your hand. Any opposed to rejecting it? Okay, record reflects that it was 9-1 in favor of the motion to reject. I believe it was 9-1.
Yep.
Okay, the next item is Ms. McCarthy's idea, number 115. And this was the extension, and I believe this actually, her idea actually went from Perf and River Road.
Well, it started at 46 and
Right.
Champion Boulevard.
Right.
Went down Champion Boulevard and went across the Cibolo Nature Center and tied into Herf Road, and then went down Herf Road all the way to IH-10.
Okay, that one she actually rescinded
That's right.
in the meeting. This one she left in as an
Okay.
idea, which was the extension of Herf Road to connect to the I-10 access road right there around Bevy, Christie Parkway. That's that one. Sobo.
Ms. McCarthy, I know you're still there. We're struggling a little bit with, I know that you made 2 presentations about this. One was, I think, an overhead route that crossed the Cibolo Nature Center. And I think that was, my understanding was that was the one you rescinded. The second one, go ahead.
That's correct. I rescinded that.
Okay, the second one, did you extend an overhead roadway from 46 along Herf Road to I-10, or was it just from extending Herf Road to?
Yeah. Yes, well, my idea is that you could, instead of tearing up or duplicating the bridge that's in existence that was built incorrectly 9 feet below, go above that area, connect it from the Esser side and from the 46, join together, follow Herf, and connect into the access road, where there would actually be one stop there at the access road if it's connected to the southeast of the Bevy and Santa Crista. The topography changes dramatically there, and that piece of property was for sale. The bridge would actually run into the land there and direct into the access road. But I was told twice that that's against TxDOT's approval for you can't have access into an access road more than 1 mile from another. The only other access connection is the extension of that road that's been a dead-end road behind Billy's for years and years. That's the only one that's close. And I've got calls into TxDOT to verify that, because I see connections all over interstates and state highways that exceed 1 mile. So I'll get back to you on that. But that was my connection. It was overhead with no stops all the way until you get to the access road.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Bobby?
Right. I consider them as two different projects, one being on one side of the expressway to get to Main Street and Herf, and the other to get to the hospital from the southbound, or let's say eastbound frontage road. But considering 115 on the right side of what we're looking, on the top side of what we're looking at, right now I use the existing roadway just to get to the expressway all the time. So the system's there, the roadway system to get northbound or westbound is there. I just can't see logistically the topography allowing a overpass or any type of at-grade separation to benefit in that area. So I just don't. It's kind of like elevating the Herf intersection and River Road at $10 million, $12 million right now. There's a way to get to the frontage road right now to head either east or west, and the cost to do this project wouldn't save you a whole bunch more time. Maybe I should have just said that. You can get east and west in a little longer time than this if it were built, but this would be very expensive to build.
Gary?
My understanding is that it's calling for a new bridge over I-10.
I don't know it's over I-10. I believe it is over 87 and connecting to the I-10 access road.
Well, it crosses to try to get to the hospital. So whether it goes over or under, it's a great separation. It's just costly. Yes, it's just costly to. I get to I-10 with no problem from that intersection anyway right now.
So may I ask Wanda, what in your mind, what was the purpose of this? To move traffic faster down Herf, or?
The proposal that I made, I think that Bobby is combining somebody else's proposal of crossing I-10. That's not what I had proposed. So I apologize if that was not clear. What I have proposed is getting from 46 or Esser to I-10 access road only. And there is a topography change right there that would bring a 2-level bridge network up to grade at that intersection. But the purpose is to mitigate the need of miles and miles of greenfield roads that's been proposed by both TxDOT and the city of Boerne, not having to do an additional crossing of the Cibolo, not having to take by eminent domain miles and miles of taxpayers' property, because the comment that's been made repeatedly in this committee is that Herf and Esser is one of the worst intersections in the county, which to me is debatable. All the worst intersections are the access road, but that was the purpose, is to mitigate the traffic in what y'all have deemed as the worst intersection.
Are we looking at the same one that you're talking about?
Well, I think this is about as close as we have a project sheet to describe it. I apologize for the confusion, but I think Ms. McCarthy gave us a sheet, but I don't think we ever translated it into one of these.
No, because it was so similar to this one, and we had already established that TxDOT wouldn't allow that connection to the access road.
So can she see this?
Can you see the video or the
Can somebody take a picture and send it to her?
Yeah, we can't see anything that.
Well, I think we've got a clear understanding now of what you're suggesting or proposing. Are there other questions or thoughts about this? We've had one that says, probably not.
I want to clarify something real quick. Is this a raised level road from 46 all the way to I-10? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm proposing.
Turf is on the bottom and something's on the top?
That's what I propose, because the city and the county and the state already own the access. They wouldn't have to buy hardly anything, maybe a half mile.
Well, I looked into that, and the cost just on the elevator from 46 to 10, not including the interchanges, was over $100 million. Well, I don't think that we can afford to spend $100 million. Plus, we will not have a workable interchange at either end. In other words, you won't be able to get on and off at either end. So
Too short,
I
too close.
considering this.
It seems to me that we've got a couple of other options about how to mitigate HERF and 46 traffic. And I think I would rather explore those additional options first before I would consider something like this.
Okay.
So just one bit of TxDOT history that I recall, it's a little fuzzy. If we remember 12, 15 years ago, that portion of frontage road didn't even exist. Between Christus Parkway was a dead-end road for a long time, and that frontage road didn't even exist. The city of Boerne and TxDOT reached an agreement to fund that roadway to build that frontage road. And so there's a minute order, is the TxDOT term, that came from TxDOT Austin, and there was a cost-sharing agreement to build that portion of frontage road. In that minute order, and I haven't seen it in a couple years, but I can find it. In that minute order, it gave exact locations and it specifically said that Cross Point, Christus, and Norris Lane would be the only public road connection points to that frontage road. So I could try to find that, but that's, I believe, one of the questions Ms. McCarthy asked, is allowing connections to the frontage road. So that would require getting something changed from Austin to allow another connection point.
So in other words, that's not a hard and fast rule. That was an agreement that was made. That's why I was researching that. But thank you for explaining it.
No problem.
Okay, I've heard mostly comments against moving this project forward. So I will assume that's a motion. Is there any objection to rejecting this project from moving forward? Hearing none, it's rejected. Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. I'm sorry we didn't make that clear earlier. Okay. Is it close enough to 3 o'clock, Ben?
Nope. It's 18 minutes and somebody's missing that really asked that that we wait for her.
Well, the Trails Committee has asked that we wait till 3 o'clock to make their presentation. So I'm going to ask that you turn to the back of your minutes should be about 6 sheets there. What's the first one, Bob? 3? Okay, the first sheet is actually the first of a sheet of 4 that is a documentation of the projects that we agreed to carry forward. And so what I'd like to do in the far right-hand corner or column, it says follow-up. I'd like to go down through here and identify who needs to do what. We've got some writing assignments that we've agreed to in the past, and we need to go ahead and get those done. You can see on project database reference number 3, I agreed to write a letter to BISD about getting rid of that gate. So that's mine. Going down, I have another one down there, narrative to write on project 27. On number 37, on the second page, I had agreed to talk to the Vogt family at one time about the possibility of showing a major thoroughfare plan through their property. This is the extension of 1376 down to Honeybee Lane or somewhere down there. That was before we had come up with the concept of recognizing major thoroughfare plans. That we said that as long as they're not used to set up the situation for eminent domain, we're not opposed to those as long as those roads occur in conjunction with development. That's the shorthand version. So my question to you as a committee is, do you still want me to discuss this with the Vogt family or just include this as part of those other major thoroughfare type projects?
Well, there's other families you'd need to talk to besides the Vogt family.
Right.
The Spanish.
They're the first ones, though, right?
Yeah. But, I don't know. That's going to develop probably in there. But then you're going to have to tie into like Honeybee Lane, and that's probably a private lane. That's not a public street. So, I don't know. It's going to be a mixture of possibly development and eminent domain. I think it ought to be kept on there.
Well, the question is not whether it's kept on there. The question is
Does Don need
whether I need to go talk to somebody.
Don might.
I think the Vogts they know what's looking at.
My sense is that if the recommendation is that this be on the thoroughfare plan, nobody else was contacted about roads being put on the thoroughfare plan, and again, the intent of that, which we've questioned sometimes, but as long as it follows the procedure of not being built via other means, as long as it's voluntary and when the property is developed, the road goes in there. I don't know that it's necessary to contact this one family and treat them different than the others. So my sense would be do it all the same.
Yeah, I agree.
For whichever way it's being done.
Okay, very good. Any objections to that approach?
So it would stay on this?
It'll stay on there. I'll just take off the requirement that I go contact them.
Yes.
Ben, we have you down here writing a draft about Project 40. This was, I think, your sort of big long-range vision concept of a number of roundabouts.
Yeah, so that's sort of I called it a roundabout bypass. We've since heard about what are called roundabout corridors. And it's a concept, of course, and I know Mr. Kite sometimes says, well, that's not necessarily the best solution. But at the same time, the goal here is just to facilitate flow. And if we can demonstrate it, if we can figure out the easements or what have you, the right-of-way, it might make a lot of sense. It's just to try to reduce the number of times that people have to stop as they make their way from one side of Bernie to another.
Okay, so
And sure, I can take my pen to paper on that.
Okay, and it doesn't need to be long. It needs to be long enough to satisfy Northern and then be incorporated into the sheet.
Not 22 pages.
Not 22 pages.
Well, and his point about a corridor, if you've got multiple intersections that you're going to replace with a roundabout, you've got to almost do all of them, because if you don't have through flow. You don't have a continuous flow. Now, a roundabout in the middle of nowhere where there's no signals on either side of it, that's fine. But if you start putting roundabouts in series and they're fairly close to each other, you almost have to create this corridor, which is what you need to write into your report.
Well, I think that was the original intent.
John, appreciate it.
That we discussed, is that the corridor of roundabouts would be Herf and 46 to Blanco and Esser to Adler and Esser, and then at the end of Adler at Main Street. So if I'm remembering Ben and Jonah's initial concept, that was all intact as one roundabout after another.
Yeah.
And having just experienced travel in Europe, that's the way it was set up. It's roundabout after roundabout after roundabout.
And it works, doesn't it?
And it works,
Yeah.
as long as your GPS knows that.
And they drink wine over there too,
They
don't they?
do, yes.
Get dizzy. So you can navigate it.
Okay. All right. Well, Ben, we'll look forward to your write-up on that.
So I know.
On the third page, Project 101, this is the City Park Road. I've agreed to write a narrative about traffic calming in that area. And also the interim committee, Project 124. This was a project that was in the interim committee report. And I think we can just use the narrative out of the committee report, right, Northern? Okay, so that's done.
Don, on the note of traffic calming, I know we're making some good progress here, but I was just in Crested Butte for about a week in Colorado, and they did a really interesting thing. Instead of speed bumps, which made me think of Jeff Carroll's kind of anti-speed bump initiative, or the kind of that I've not to pin that on you necessarily, the Jeff Carroll anti-speed. No. But they had planters. So this was a two-way street, and they had planters set up in the street and a sign on it that you had to yield to oncoming traffic. So I took pictures of it as I drove through. So as you came through this neighborhood street, it basically forced you to kind of come to a stop and let other cars come around it, and then you could go around. And it just slowed down the whole thing. And I thought it was fascinating. I'd never seen anything like it, but I took some pictures of it.
Yep. There's all kind of different ways.
Part of a
I'm
road
sure.
diet.
Yeah. Yeah, and this wasn't what I thought it was a traditional road diet. They just stuck it. It's sort of like a parked car on the road, and you're like, you have to stop and wait. But somehow it worked. And
Our neighborhood wants speed humps. I tell them, just park your car on the street.
I think those EMT guys that are responsible for starting IVs in the back of the ambulances, I think they ate those speed bumps too. You know?
yeah, right, yeah. Probably the patients as well.
Okay. I think that's all of those. Is there any other Northern that I missed that we need narratives on?
We have one for Blanco Road for traffic calming.
Oh, I missed yours. Yeah, you had one to write, right?
And John has one.
Oh, I missed a whole page.
I think Marcus owes me two.
Which one, so I can tell him he couldn't make it? Marcus owes you.
He owes me.
The other one, turn lane at Ranger Creek.
He owes me the Almond Road, the dog legs on Almond Road, where you guys were kind of wanting to straighten.
I saw it in an email. Either you weren't on that,
Okay.
or you were.
Okay.
But regardless, I'll get it for you. I
Okay.
know what you're talking about.
Okay, and
Is it a number, project number, so I could?
Yes, it is.
Down on number 163, didn't I send you the comments on that?
That's for the turn lane at Ranger Creek. I-10 westbound frontage road at Ranger.
It's 116 on the fourth page, Bobby.
There it is. I was right there. Yes, sir.
Okay, John, what was it?
On 163, didn't I send you those comments? A long time ago.
I believe you did, John. I'll check my email.
Okay, what was the other one? You said 116?
116 was for Marcus.
Yes. Marcus or Bobby, I know what Northern needs.
Okay, anything else, Northern?
I don't believe so, but I will say for the committee members, I will send out a link to this again, or you can look at the paper documents. If you are not happy with the narrative under recommendation detail, if you're not happy with anything on here, please let me know, because, I think of me as a computer. You send it to me, that's what I'm putting out. So, I'm not a wordsmith.
No, but she is a pretty amazing person.
Absolutely.
Are very appreciative of Northern's efforts. This is the basis of a lot of our work, and so help Northern out by doing some of this work that we need to get done for her. The next 2 pages is another part of a spreadsheet. These are the projects that I showed, and I think Northern showed them as well, that we rejected. And I think it's important that we include this information to show that we considered these projects and that we rejected them, and then the reason we rejected them. In some cases, for example, Project 34, we rejected that section of Old Fredericksburg Road, not because we didn't think it needed to be done, but we rejected that suggestion in deference to another suggestion that included Fredericksburg Road. So there may be other places where we rejected it. Number 21, we rejected that recommendation in favor of a roundabout. There are several projects that I don't have a record of why we rejected those. One of them is School Street, which Project 92. The description was add middle turn lane and bike lanes / sidewalks on South School from IH-10 to San Antonio, and on San Antonio from School to Main Street. I believe we rejected that in favor of another project on School Street, but I don't, let me see if I can find it.
Well, there wasn't any right-of-way for that.
And I think the objection about that was, well, there are other areas where we don't have right-of-way.
I believe we rejected that in favor of Project 38, which shows up over there, which is more of a study that said we can do
Corridor
some
study or something. Yeah.
Is that y'all's understanding?
That's correct.
Okay. Then the next one is Upper Balcones Road.
Number's
172. And I think it just said improve the road. And I think we rejected that, but I don't know why. And if we did, why would we reject Upper Balcones?
It's a pretty major component of,
That.
it's a major component of mobility on the southwest quadrant, given what's going to come to that area.
Did that have anything to do
like to
with
open it up.
development, Jeff? Do you remember Upper Balcones Road and just improving it as a comment? Is there any
Oh, I think the
future
reason why-
development that's going to pay for improvement on that road?
I believe
Do
this
you know?
is the section the WCID is going to fund.
That's what I'm asking. I thought we had
Yeah.
that conversation.
Yeah, the WCID doesn't go all the way to Upper Balcones, though. There's properties.
And that
Stop short.
section, the 4,000-foot section,
Well, I think our question was, why did we pick that section?
And we talked about, I agree, Mr. Kite, and I think we thought that they picked that section because of the curves. They're not big curves, but if you're going at a certain speed, they are kind of.
Well, I don't know if it's curves or vertical curves here. I'd have to look and see exactly
both?
where it's at.
Could be both, yeah.
I think the intent of that whole the intention is to give us some access points down to Balcones where the new HEB is going to be, so that we've got traffic. I mean, that's what we talked about in the project subcommittee. You know, we've got one grocery store, but we're going to have a second grocery store there. And that would give people an opportunity to go south for their groceries rather than going back into that zone of major traffic at Cascade Caverns Road. So that was the intent of looking at that improvement.
But this doesn't have anything to do with Cascade Cavern Road.
So this is from the interim report, the past studies subcommittee report, and another that I need to
That's
get
scenic
back.
loop, though.
That's scenic loop. I'm
Okay.
looking Upper Balcones.
Other side.
Upper Balcones.
It was project number 172.
If development were to ever happen at that location, that would be and I'd have to go back and look at the ETJ map and see if it's in the city's ETJ or not. But we would classify that as a substandard road, and that developer would be required to make improvements to that road as part of their development.
With a reason or one side.
If they were proportional.
Yeah.
To their side, correct.
But they have you'd have two different developers to.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't reject it from a recommendation that be improved. It's just a different
Correct, yeah,
method.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the majority of the roads we would consider substandard. Yeah.
But whether it was right or not, we rejected it because we thought it was just a safety issue. It didn't help congestion.
Yeah.
I think it's a valid, maybe a long-term project rather than a short-term project. I think not including it would be a mistake.
I think our concern was the
Change
second heaviest growth population is in that southwest quadrant. So, yeah, it's not a problem today, but these are going to be homes that will be developed in the next decade. So we thought it was fairly important. Perhaps not today, but it's going to be at some point.
So I sort of remember talking about this one, and I think the way it was worded was another reason why we rejected it. Because it wasn't necessarily to relieve existing congestion. It was worded in such a way to help future development, and I think we all had issue with the way that was worded.
That's what I was asking about it.
So if somebody wants to rewrite it, I'll put it in there.
I'll rewrite it if we decide to put it in there, but I'm just one vote.
I don't know why the limits are so sharp.
Yeah, why is it not?
Also remember,
That's why without it just curves. Because it is funky. If you're going 35, 40, all of a sudden, where did this come up? It's a quick left and a right.
Okay, Bobby, you got it.
I got it. Yes, sir.
We're putting it back in. We'll move it off this list.
Okay.
Another one that we rejected was item 186, which is Johns Road. And it was proposing to add a turn lane on Johns Road from I-10 to Tapatia Springs.
There's no way you're going to do it with the right-of-way that's there.
I want to say we assumed that would happen with development. I don't know.
Could we see that one real quick?
Yep, sorry.
That was one of those connection conversations through the thoroughfare plan.
Only a little bit is in the city.
I think we said it wouldn't help congestion. It's just an accommodating feature that is being requested. That's what I recall.
Okay.
Add turn lane to at least the first 90-degree turn lane. I mean, the traffic right now is not. I think if you add a turn lane here, you have to add turn lane at a lot of two-lane roadways that have driveways coming in and out, and we're going to be widening all over the place.
Unless it's changed, there's not that many driveways on
So
So why would you have a continuous
turn lane. Correct.
The reason we rejected it is because the roadway is not sufficiently congested, an inadequate number of roadways, driveways to work.
And not a major safety issue.
Okay.
It's accommodating.
And the last one, number 217, is battle intense in Keeneland. And the recommendation was to make this an all-way stop. We show it as rejected.
I believe that's because it's in Comal County.
Yes. And
Yep.
there was some, Marcus said something about this intersection, and I can't remember what it was now, but he had made a point about that intersection
That it's
functioning the way it is.
Yes. I remember.
It's what the way it is?
Functioning the way it
Functioning?
is.
Okay.
I don't see an issue, that's why.
Well, that I can fill in my box, and I'm happy. So
Yeah.
you have your assignments. We look forward to getting those finished, and it's 3:00 and time for the bin and trails subcommittee, separate use path, pedestrian safety subcommittee report.
Super crew.
The what?
The super team.
Super team.
That's on foot.
He wasn't listening to you anyway.
That's on foot. Or on a bike. On a bike. She made it. I saw her running to the door.
Okay, yeah, it's up there, it's not down here, that's all good. So first of all, this is a trails vision that I've put together through collaborative partnership with an entire committee of folks who turned out with a lot of passion and a lot of vision and a willingness to create a really bold vision for what we could do with trails in Kendall County. Now, because it's a vision, it's not a plan. Okay, that means that when we eventually start to see lines on the map and people start to feel, oh dear, what are they doing? Hold back, please, because this is literally a vision. I don't think that this group is going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and stamp those roads on the map. This is more about informing future thoroughfare planning, just like so much of the other work that we've done. But I will say this, this committee has focused a lot of energy on fixing existing infrastructure, making it more efficient, which is awesome. But when we start to get into trails thing, yes, we have some existing infrastructure to work on, but we also want to be thinking about what trails could be in a place like Kendall County. And because we're both expecting a lot of development and simultaneously we're also not yet, well, let's put it this way, we still have some time to plan. I'm trying to get ahead of it. I want us to just think creatively and think about possibilities. Okay, and I think that's what the committee is in favor of as well. I'm going to start though with road biking because Nolan Keene was, he approached several times. The elderly gentleman doesn't have any.
Ben, could you recognize the members of your committee?
Oh, sure, absolutely. We have Seth Mitchell, all right, Brad Gessner, Craig McDonald is right. I never used your last name. So sorry. Yep. We got Jonathan Piper and we have Pam Hodges over here.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's who's in the room. We have other folks that are not.
We have Bobby.
Oh, I'm sorry, and we have Bobby. Thank you, and we have Northern.
De facto, but thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking behind me, but yes, Northern was very active. Bobby was also very active. So it was there were more people who visited us. We had Rich Sena stop by for a little while. We had Danny Zink show us what he has in mind for the city of Bernie. We had a really great conversation at one point with Gary Merritt from the Great Springs Project. Full 2 hours of really good information. So we had a lot of people weigh in on this, and it's been a long project. And of course, like most committees, we kind of were, trying to find our footing, and then finally, I think it was after our presentation from Gary Merritt with the Great Springs Project that we really found it, and that will become apparent as to why I think. But Nolan Keene, he approached us, and he was talking about bike safety, and he was saying that basically, when you're a road biker, you definitely don't feel welcome. And I've been out to parts, and Don's nodding at me, but I've been out to parts of the county and talked to folks, and people complain about the bikers. But yet the rule of the road of the law is share the road. The road is not just for cars with engines in them. It's also for other forms of mobility, but it's not welcoming to people taking other forms of mobility. But nonetheless, they're out there, they're using it, and here's a Strava map. This is a mobile application that tracks people's rides, and it allows us to see where people have been going, where the most use has been. And as you look through it, I'll just show you one more shot. They're going all over the county, really. They have some favorite roads that they absolutely love. Apparently, Mccarthy Road is just just fantastic. It's a favorite.
Does red mean more use on this?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I got this from Seth. So red means more use, but the point is that folks are going where they can go, because there are roads that if you go out on them, you're not going to find that there's shoulder to ride on. You're certainly not going to feel safe, right? And that shoulder is that one little safety buffer. But then, of course, the county roads are definitely being used. So Nolan was talking about safety. And last night I was actually looking up some information, and I found this. This is from 2021. I think it came out fairly recently. And pedestrian fatalities increased by 15% in 2021. Now, that might have been coming out of COVID, so there could be other factors in there. But that quote by the TxDOT Executive Director, Mark Williams, is extremely telling to me. He says, only 1% of traffic crashes in Texas involve pedestrians, yet pedestrians account for 19% of all roadway deaths. That's because pedestrians lack the protective equipment, airbags, seatbelts, and bumpers common to vehicles. So the reason that people are getting killed on these roadways is because they don't have airbags and bumpers and seatbelts. And I got to be honest with you, when I see that, I go, wait, is that how TxDOT thinks about people on road who are not in cars? That somehow it's their responsibility to not be killed by cars, And the thing is, when I look at the infrastructure that they build, they do not make sufficient accommodation for pedestrians or bikers or anybody else. It's all about cars. That very quote, that's because pedestrians lack the protective equipment, airbags, seatbelts, and bumpers common to vehicles, illustrates the problem. You want to know why you don't see as many people commute to work not using cars? It's because everybody knows it's sketchy to go out there and try to go navigate some of these roads. That's the reason why I think parents are not allowing their kids to go to school by walking or biking as much, because it's scary. I've got a young daughter. It's scary. And it's because we intuitively know this is true. If you get hit, you have almost 20% chance of dying. And the roads are not built to help prevent those hits. Our crosswalks aren't either. Our crosswalks are also sketchy, I would argue. So I want to think beyond this. I want to think about how we can solve for this, first of all. But secondly, I want to encourage the committee to think about the fact that mobility is more than about getting in a car, and that we need to think about mobility. So obviously, safety solutions are key. Obviously, better crosswalks, off-road paths help keep pedestrians and bikers away from vehicles so that their elbows don't get clipped. As Seth was saying, he doesn't exactly enjoy it when somebody flies by him at 60 miles, 65 miles an hour, about an inch and a half off his elbow. And I believe that happens. I have no doubt that happens. So that's something to consider. But I'm going to be honest with you. When I approach this, for me, I'm not a road biker. I'm not biased toward the road biking experience. That's not why I'm in the room. And other people aren't in the room for that reason either, necessarily. Some of them are bikers, some of them are not. Some of us just think this is kind of the right way to go. So one of the key recommendations that literally we have our recommendations in terms of near-term actions. Our first one is to adopt the work that Bitsy and Rich and the projects committee recommended as far as pedestrian solutions and crossings and things, because a lot of that was based around the school systems and making sure they're safe to access. But the other thing that we were focused on is a safe routes to school program. Basically, the concept here is that because within 2-mile radius you're supposed to walk to school or find out some other mode to school, they technically won't serve it with a bus unless it's particularly dangerous, which of course means most of our community to get to school. But nonetheless, that if we could prioritize creating safe routes to schools, we can help alleviate some of the school-related traffic that we see. I'm not saying it solves all the congestion. I'm saying I think it could be part of the dynamic that solves that 3:30, 4 o'clock rush that is a big factor in our traffic. I mean, do we agree that the schools are part of the traffic? I've heard a lot of people say the schools are the main reason for the traffic. So have we thought holistically enough about it? I don't think so. And I want to offer that the more we can facilitate pedestrian and bike access to those schools, the better. And the cool thing is this. If we solve for that, that's a 2-mile radius around Currington Elementary. We're basically saying, yeah, Danny's Inc., you've got a plan that's gonna move people safely and solve for a lot of these mobility issues. It's a great plan. Let's use the Safe Schools program and that initiative to leverage grant funding to align the community to make this stuff happen. Okay, it's not just, oh yeah, this transportation community recommended it. When you start calling it a Safe Schools program, it starts to register as this is about young children, the most vulnerable in our community. And not only that, but we're also solving for their own mobility. It's not just getting to schools, it's so they can get to their friends' houses, so they can get to the corner store. I used to do that growing up, but I had good trails and good sidewalks where I grew up. But the other issue that I focus on is micromobility. This is where more my bias comes in, is that not everybody is on a road bike. Some people literally want to commute. And of course, on the far left, we have this gentleman who's riding on the old number 9 trail, and you'll notice he's got a backpack on. That's not somebody out going for a little Sunday stroll kind of thing. That's somebody who's trying to get somewhere. And we could potentially facilitate more people using that service. Again, if it's part of a network that actually connects you places and isn't just essentially designed as a recreational trail of nowhere. The second photo, that senior citizen who's on the mobility scooter, the reason I threw that in there is because I was driving through Kerrville one day and I saw people literally going to HEB on scooters like that, and they were literally getting on the state highway to go home. And I was thinking about it because I was like, well, first of all, it was freaking me out because I thought that's really dangerous. They seemed very unaware, but hey, it almost to the point where it was obvious that, frankly, this is how they get around. Like, they're used to it. And then I thought about it, I thought, well, wait a minute, somebody's on a fixed income. Maybe they can't afford a car. Maybe they can't afford gas. Maybe they can't afford insurance. Maybe they have a health issue and they're not allowed to have a license. Whatever the case, these people need to and deserve to get around. We need to solve mobility for them. Obviously, we have the road bikers. I don't want to forget them. And then, of course, if you go to Fair Oaks Ranch and even sometimes in my neighborhood, you see people sort of playing around in their golf carts, right? Sometimes they're very fancy. Sometimes they're covered in lights. Sometimes they're blaring music. And, of course, the drivers all hate them. And I put it up there not really because it's the same kind of micromobility as these single-person use vehicles, but also because it's something I think we could consider going forward as a mobility option. And to that point, I started looking at what's coming down the pipe in the way of mobility options. Now, first of all, the top 3 all exist. That super sort of mobility scooter already exists. That electric bicycle exists. It's one of the more highly recommended ones. And then that what's called a neighborhood vehicle on the top right. That's made by Polaris. And there's so many different configurations. You can get that one with doors. You can get that one, and they can be hard doors. They can be soft doors. You can have one with a bed on the back like a truck. So it actually is a potentially legitimate mode of getting around. If you look at the bottom on the far left, that's called a microcar. And apparently that one's coming out pretty soon. And I think the top speed on that one is 55 miles per hour. The middle one is like a little 3-wheeled sort of scooter. That one's top speed is 50 miles an hour. And on the far right, bottom right, that one is a single person, kind of a little car scooter thing, but it's all enclosed. That one goes, as I recall, about 50 miles per hour, has a pretty significant range, I want to say around 90 miles. And it has airbags and it has air conditioning and a seatbelt. So, I mean, TxDOT approved, right? That's okay. We'll work with them. But sorry to be snide, but it's kind of offensive. In fact, let me just say that one person was explaining to me, he said, bike lanes on a road are offensive because it's saying, yeah, we'll make some. It's good to have them in places where that's the only option. But if that's like the default, like we're going to put a road in, we'll put a bike lane. All better now. It's like saying, yeah, you're still putting me on the road with a semi-truck, potentially putting me in harm's way. And most people don't really want to ride there. Some people will because they have to. Some people will because recreation just compels them to. But most people go, hell no, I'm not going on there. And so let's be realistic that that's not a great solution. Again, off-road paths. Part of my vernacular, by the way, with the language. So the other idea that we want to focus on is dedicated right-of-ways. So obviously you have your trails, sort of like your old number 9. Sometimes these can be very narrow, of course, and barely buffered by much vegetation of small right-of-ways. But also, we're proposing that we also consider greenways. as we look at thoroughfare planning, that we think about not only the ability to facilitate this kind of safe mobility, but even leveraging it to preserve the hill country character that we cherish. So we started looking at some examples, and obviously, you look next door, you look in your region. And this is the Howard Peak Greenway Trail System plan. And of course, what they're trying to do, this is a big city that did not have any foresight around trails. And so Howard Peak had this idea of what if we create this trail network? And they're trying to put it all together. Now, at this point, they have very limited ability to find pathways. It's probably far more expensive because you're trying to navigate an already built environment with who knows what other factors that you have to compensate for. And basically, they're doing something very cool, but that's not really necessarily translating as a true mobility network, at least not at this point. It's going to take a while, I think, to where you could say you can get off a road easily and have a nice, clean shot to your destination. We are starting from scratch. We have the opportunity to do something different, to be more forward-thinking, and to learn the lesson that they learned late, that people are going to want this and that people are going to use it once it's there. So then we looked at the Great Springs Project. The Great Springs Project, if you don't know about it, is an effort to connect San Antonio to Austin via a trail system. And the idea is, let's leverage the existing trail components in different cities like San Antonio, New Braunfels, San Marcos, and Austin, but let's bridge them. Let's figure out a way to bridge them. Let's create pathways to connect the two. And again, we talked to Gary Merritt. That was a very influential meeting. Really great feedback. And what helped a lot was that he was saying they were doing all of this without using eminent domain. They were using negotiations for conservation right-of-ways. They're also sometimes using some government, some dollars from bonds and things like that. But they had this whole list, and this is in their report. The report is excellent. I can't recommend it enough. It's excellent. It's one of the best, master planning kind of reports I've ever seen. It's beautiful. It's so well articulated. And right here, they're showing you that there are all these different little tricks of the trade that they can use to acquire right-of-ways. And we said, Gary, how is this being received? And he said, well, a lot of people start to realize that this could add value to their land, and it can enhance their quality of life. And so they're actually not put off as if we were to approach them with, say, I want to put a road through your property. Trails are different. It has a different psychology. And they start to realize, if I want to sell my land, it probably adds value. And if I want to access the world around me, this could be a cool thing. The main thing that you hear the most, apparently, is, but I don't want to see it from my house. So if they have sufficient landscape and they can tuck it into the landscape and not see from the house, that tends to be part of the equation. And they're in the process of developing that now. So here we are. We're experiencing rapid growth and development. That's an actual photo from Bernie. I'm not going to tell you where. I'm not looking for shaming, nor am I saying, oh, these bad people or oh, those bad houses. To be honest with you, I can't blame people for wanting to move to Kendall County because I love it here too. I can't blame them. This is not shut the gate behind me. This is about how do we accept that the gate's open and find a better way toward a Kendall County that we can, that's desirable to live in, frankly. That's all good, but it's totally autocentric. Yes, they have some sidewalks, but it's not, I don't know. I know that property. I know they took out a ton of trails. I also know they're covering karst recharge zone with a lot of pavement. Just saying. Oh, and so that's the key point. If we don't plan our future, developers will plan it for us. That's why I worked on the Unified Development Code Committee with the city, is because I was trying to get ahead of the development. If we get ahead of it, if we know how to compensate for its negative impacts and adjust course to the best of our ability, then at least we have a preservation of our quality of life that we desire. And the thing is, we know we don't have county authority. We know that, that we can't assess impact fees, things like that. But we can be creative with the tools that we have, and this is part of the pitch. Let's be creative with the tools that we have. So I started thinking about, well, how would trail systems start to interact with new built developments? And I found this picture and I thought, well, that's stunning. And it's pretty clear to me they basically took a road and then put a trail in the middle of it to illustrate it. But still, the concept is this, is that if you start to weave these trails into neighborhoods, you create these safe routes for kids and seniors, you increase the community cohesion because people are making eye contact, they're waving to each other, they're giving each other head nods, they're smiling, all that jazz. That creates community cohesion. And of course, it enhances a sense of place. I'll be honest with you, maybe in a few years that's going to have a sense of place. Right now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so critical, but it has this Anywhere America vibe about it, and it doesn't feel like the Hill Country. I just have to name it. It's just the truth. I don't know who's going to argue that. And then I was thinking about these greenways, and so if we have greenways that are going through, and again, one of the things we're talking about doing is leveraging thoroughfare planning to require these greenways, and these are not greenways for cars; these are greenways for dedicated trail corridors. Is the vision that we're offering. And the way that they can interact with these communities, you can see it creates a sense of open space. It creates a better sense of place in terms of where you live. It creates interactions with the natural world, recreational experience, and of course, we can also preserve recharge areas and things like that, recharge zones. And then we also were talking about how beautiful some of our existing Kendall County roads are. I mean, look, that's just stunning to me right there. It just makes me want to go right now, get on a bike. I'm going to have to borrow one, I think. But, we want to preserve that hill country character. That is something that is valued by the whole community as far as I can tell. We want to preserve that. We want to make it part of the network, which means we have to be mindful about these roads and not just treat them as existing right-of-ways that then we just blow up and tear down all their beautiful oaks on them. We need to be very mindful about how we steward them. And possibly as they start to get busy, we can potentially implement off-road trails on those. And let's not just throw them in as these linear lines, but we can weave them in amongst the trees. And again, embrace the rural heritage and embrace the hill country character to, again, foster a sense of place. As we were talking about the state highways, we started realizing those could be great micromobility corridors. So we could, again, that's another off-road trail. It's much more attractive than riding along a state highway. It ensures the safety of the users. And frankly, as you say, if you were going up Old Sisterdale Highway, first of all, it would connect you to Sisterdale. It can take you all the way up toward Fredericksburg. And if we plan ahead and we start to create that vision on the Fredericksburg end of the equation, or Gillespie County, they may say, yeah, let's connect to the other direction. And now we're actually creating a micromobility network that's regional. Mobility hubs. So one of the ideas is if you were to say you're driving across, riding across one of those Greenway trails, you would encounter a highway. And if you were in an area that was very busy, you might run into a mobility hub where you could hop on a bus and head on who knows where. Now, initially, of course, we don't have public transportation, but we're not trying to say here's what we have here and now, and therefore it's going to be that way forever, because we know things change. We're saying let's think ahead and think about the potential here. So locating them at major trailheads and where they intersect with county roads. So yes, you have that off-road trail, but you also potentially could have places where you could hop on, say, a ride hail or a ride share or public transportation. By the way, one of these hubs is probably going to be right there, right at Balcones Creek, where the new San Antonio Community College is going to be. So obviously, we think we need to connect there as best we can. Now, looking at it, you say, gee whiz, Ben, that's a lot of infrastructure. And I'm thinking, no. Yes, it's a lot of infrastructure, but I'm not saying we have to build it right now. Obviously, it's going to take time, it's going to take money, but as we start to negotiate trail easements, they can evolve. So in other words, initially you might have a dirt path, basically a hiking trail, and over time it might move to something that's a more refined gravel path. And as dollars become available and traffic demands it, we can start to harden that path. And so that's what this is showing here. This is not one size fits all. The more rural you are, the more rural that pathway could be. The closer you are to the city, it might make sense, as density might dictate, to harden that trail. So I'm going to pass this over right quick to Brad Gessner to talk about economic benefits of trails.
Thanks, Ben. And I'll just give Ben a breather. I forewarn you, I won't be able to give you the passion that Ben has for these projects. He's been a great leader for us, and you've got a hell of an asset here in the Hill Country with Ben. But he asked me to talk a little bit about the other benefits. All of the benefits that Ben just went over are really for Kendall County residents. But my background was in the hospitality and tourism industry for 40-some years, most recently general manager of the LA Convention Center. And the reason why cities build convention centers is to be that economic pump primer, bring all of these tourists for a convention, trade show, special event. Trails can do the same thing. In addition to the benefits that Ben just described, bicycle tourism is a thing, is what my grandson told me. And basically, it's in 2018, it was an $83 billion industry. And that's not including purchasing of bikes and cycles and those things. It's actually traveling to a destination that's desirable, that has the infrastructure, like a convention center provides the infrastructure to get a convention. Trails provide the infrastructure to have cycling tourism. People already, we know that there are 4 tour operators here in Kendall County that coordinate and sell bicycle tours. A number of my friends here that cycle with me almost daily, we've stopped at the coffee shops and we'll run into a lot of these folks, and they're from Europe and elsewhere in the United States, elsewhere in Texas. How do they generate revenue? Is it basically you have outsiders come and stay in your hotels, eat in your restaurants, shop in your stores, buy gasoline, and then they go away. It's one of the cleanest industries that's really out there. We've got up on the board what different types there are. So I just described the bicycle tourism, the actual organized tour, but you also have organized events. Tour de Bernie draws people from outside of the Bernie or Kendall County area. Tour de San Antonio. The more infrastructure you have and the more desirable trails you have, like the one that we have a vision going up the Guadalupe River. Can you imagine how much tourism that would generate and how many people would desire to come to the hill country, which already has an incredible riding environment. But if you add that additional infrastructure like the Guadalupe River Trail and some of these linear parks, you'll actually attract more of that type of organized event. And then destination riding where people actually will just come to the hill country because they've heard so much about it, they've seen the pictures, and they're just the one-offs, maybe a family, that kind of thing. And then just the day rides. A number of us actually take trips down to San Antonio, and we'll ride the Mission Trails. And we always stop at the brewery at the end of the trail and spend money. So that's the kind of thing that adding the infrastructure that we're proposing will actually benefit Kendall County. Now, I know Kendall County doesn't have a hotel occupancy tax. I hope someday that you do, and I hope someday you dedicate a portion of that hot tax to development of trailheads and trails and linear parks. I'm also on your Parks Advisory Board, appointed by Commissioner Durden, and that is something that is actually a goal in the master plan for that too. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ben.
All right, I'm going to sit over here because I've got to shift to a map in a second. But really, the goal here, at least from my standpoint, is that we can seize an opportunity to facilitate true mobility. You know, that by being planful and forward-thinking, we can start to take actions to ensure that we have a true multimodal network in Kendall County and not just, honestly, a repeat of the 20th century assumptions that everybody's going to always want to move everywhere in a car or can even afford one, frankly. When I showed this to Rich Senna, we actually just showed him the map. We didn't even talk him through it. And all of a sudden, he had this aha moment. And you know Rich, he's all about the numbers. He's all about math. He's all about cost. And he said, I see what you're doing here. And he was enthusiastic. I see. This is way more affordable. And then the infrastructure is more affordable. It's not as big. And he goes, and the cost of buying a car right now is incredible. People are not going to be able to afford them at this rate. I see what you're doing here. And that's what we're doing here. We're thinking very holistically. We're trying to account for multiple values and think about the community holistically, not just in terms of what benefits me in my current socioeconomic status or my age or my physical capacity. Okay? Very holistic. So let me jump over here. So I've got a map here of Kendall County. This is a Google map. And what I'm going to do is just sort of build, and again, this is I want to reiterate this. I need to say it almost over and over and over again until people repeat after me, but I think you'll get the point. This is a vision. Okay?
This is a vision.
Oh, Bobby, would you repeat after me? This is a vision.
He's trained me. Ben's trained me.
This is a vision. So we started to look at, and we didn't get highly fine-tuned on this, to be honest with you, because we also realized we needed to talk to the schools, for example, about, creating those safe routes and get them in the room. But we looked at, here's some schools. We have, why is this glitching on me? We have parks and a few remnants of other parts. Obviously, we have county roads and highways. And again, when it comes to the county roads, which are right here in light sort of purple, we really want to make sure that we're protecting their character as best we can and not have them turn into these major, wide, heat island, non-Kendall County alternatives. We want it to really stay Kendall County if we can and treat them as scenic routes. And as far as the state highway, again, those are potential sort of hypermobile mobility corridors for people that are not just in cars, but also if we put off-road trails, also through micromobility. And then here's the big one, okay? And I think this is, people might react, and I want everybody to breathe deep because this is not a plan. I'm sorry to reiterate this, but this is important. We've talked a lot about eminent domain. We talk about people not wanting lines through their property. When these lines were drawn, the vast majority, there were some where we sort of played around with specific routes, frankly, but don't take them seriously, like they're not in stone. And other ones, we literally it was just a broad swath. Like I just came back to this view you see right here and just started clicking. So it may even go through houses, all that stuff. We're not saying take this route. Understood?
It's a vision.
It's a vision. Thank you. All right. And so we came up with a list of these, I guess you could call them Greenfield Trails. And you can see up around the Guadalupe River, we've designated what we call the Guadalupe Trail. And you can see how it connects across multiple other roads where we ideally would have off-road pathways and takes you to destinations like James Kill Park and can also head you off to different parts of Kendall County or different towns and communities. We tried to play with the idea of integrating the existing roads with the trails in some cases, which is not to say that what we're saying is that these are roadways. These are designated trail routes is what we intend, meaning trails only. And we could specify what that means as a community, but these are not intended to be for large heavy vehicles, semi-trucks, etc. We also played with, and I'll have to point this out with a cursor, coming up right out of Fair Oaks Ranch, this was the historic Pinta Trail. And then as we hit over here in the Sisterdale Highway, we realized it basically follows, as far as we can guess, the historic Pinta Trail. And so why not just run it up that way? And we could even start to co-name that both Sisterdale Highway and the Pinta Trail route, potentially. Again, creating that sense of appreciation, that sense of place, a sense of history. And again, there's certain like straight lines, like look at that, it's going through up in the upper left-hand quadrant. That's just going through just really rough country. That's just a line saying it'd be cool to connect those in some way. And maybe it connects further up. Again, it's a vision. Same thing over here. It just sort of connects. One of the things we'd love to do is connect Bernie to ABK, Albert and Bessie Kronkowski State Natural Area. We, of course, have Miralomas, and there's Tapatio. Presumably, this is going to start to develop, and one of the ideas is to follow the creekways. But obviously, what you can start to see is that we're really looking at a full mobility network, but we're looking at it from a standpoint of dedicating it to micromobility and creating connections so you can get to destinations and enhancing people's quality of life as a result, because you're out there in the scenic beauty, out in the nature to some degree, especially if they're greenways and they're buffered with vegetation. So from here, let's do this. We talked a bit to folks out of Comfort, and they've identified some safety concerns that they also want to have taken care of. We think they should be priorities. And sorry about the low resolution of this map. I suppose I could turn off my base map. But we're basically trying to solve for some of those concerns because, Comfort ISD doesn't allow kids to walk to school. And if you look at, crossing, say, 27 or some parts of 473, I can't blame them. I mean, they don't have safe passage there. Again, I also want to point out that I showed folks that picture of that elderly woman on the mobility scooter, and they said, "Yeah, we had 3 old guys who used to ride those around Comfort. Now it's down to 2, I believe, sadly, but that's such is life. It happens." So that's Comfort, and there's some recommendations that I think might be submitted by, I don't know if Gary's going to or who. Here in Bernie, what we did not change Danny Zink's map. This is Danny Zink's map. So I know that there could be some controversy up here around the property that's part of the old Herf Ranch and Jonah's families. But nonetheless, I left it on there because this is Danny's vision, and he's given it a lot of thought. And yes, obviously, he's going to have to either, some areas they may have to negotiate easements, in some areas they may never get right of way, and it will have to adjust. And certainly our plan would have to do that as well. So that's really what we did, is we basically just said, Danny has really thought this out. Danny Zink has. He's of course now assistant city manager, former parks director. Now, we did go over into adjoining counties. And the reason is because we're supposed to be the Fair Oaks Ranch Transportation Planning Committee as well, right? And so we did go dip into Fair Oaks Ranch. And a lot of those lines that you see on there are actually existing trail routes, not the light blue ones that I say sidewalk, where we want to add sidewalks. But a lot of those green ones, there are formal and informal trails. Now, of course, and then we have this idea of obviously connecting, and we're not looking to violate any concerns that Mr. Pfeiffer has, but again, trails are a lot lighter on the land, and they're a lot easier to navigate through karst features. So maybe there's a way to work with that. And heck, and Mr. Kyle, maybe you don't like it, okay? But I'm just going to throw out there that maybe this also builds clientele. So here's the thing about vagrants, because we talked about that too. Vagrants can use roads. Vagrants can use roads. They do it all the time.
This is just a vision.
Well, this is just a vision, but beyond that, I mean, I think it's a questionable argument.
Well, and my sense is we heard a lot of concern about that 15 years ago when Old Number 9 was being developed through town. And what I see on Old Number 9 is mothers pushing strollers, friends, little kids walking back from school. I don't think I have once seen a vagrant or a homeless person walking up and down Old Number 9. I see them at the intersection of I-10 by HEB sometimes, but I've never once seen them on those trails. And maybe I'm missing something. I'm not. I walk on them at night.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you, Jonah. But can you continue, because this is just a vision.
I do want to say though, I appreciate that comment, Jonah. And actually, Jonah hasn't seen any of this, and Jonah didn't visit any of our meetings. So that's raw Jonah right there, and I'm grateful.
How much more you got?
I'm basically there. So again, what we're trying to do is connect these areas together. Make sure there's some safe passage to some of the schools, like Fair Oaks Ranch Elementary here. And facilitate mobility and eventually, hopefully, create a connection down to the San Antonio Trails network. But certainly in the nearest term we can, start to get down here to San Antonio, or over here to San Antonio Community College, so that we can connect to VIA, so that people have additional ways to get to San Antonio without having to own a car. Micromobility there, you park it there, hopefully someplace that's secure, and you hop a bus. So what we're trying to do, again, is take lessons we can learn by looking at what other cities are doing, and as well as mobility trends, and look ahead to the future. And I hope you will take it seriously. I realize that if you have a bias toward cars and things like that, or highways, that might be hard to do. There's paradigms to adjust in this regard, but we hope you guys can consider a new paradigm.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the committee members that obviously put a lot of work into this. I think you do recognize that there is, you're swimming upstream. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea. I spent a good portion of my professional career working on the historic San Antonio Mission Trails project. Cool. From concept through funding through implementation. And one of the issues was security. Mm-hmm. And we fought that and fought that and fought that. And mostly what you're fighting is fear rather than the reality. And what we found was study after study and experience after experience suggested that a heavily used trail is safer than most urban street sidewalks. As far as mothers pushing their baby strollers, they're pretty protective of their kids. But they do take care of the environment, and it's not as big an issue as it's perceived to be. That doesn't mean that it's without merit. There are some issues that you need to not create places where people can be ambushed and those things. So be sure you're sensitive to it. I would also ask that you not refer to Safe Routes to Schools as a grant program. That's a TxDOT program or a federal transportation program, but it's a reimbursement program. And so it's not that they're just going to give you money. They would expect you to spend the money, do it to their standards, and if you do everything right, then you'll get the money back or some of it. So be careful about characterizing that as sort of a free giveaway.
And that was not my intention. I was more intended to leverage it as a call to action.
Yeah. No, it's a great program, but just characterize it correctly and it'll pay you dividends. The dedicated separate use trails, I think, is a great concept, but I'd ask that y'all give some more thought. I know you've done a lot of work already, but are you dedicating those to the city, to the county? And what does that come with? Because, we maintain our roadway surfaces and we maintain things like trimming trees, and some places we cut the grass. But you need to clarify what it is that taking that dedication, accepting that. I mean, the county's official policy is we not necessarily want to accept the roads anymore because they're drained. So it doesn't mean that just because you build a nice trail that everybody's going to be government in favor of that.
So there may have to be a shift in community roles. I don't see the county or the state going out and cleaning up our highways. I see volunteers doing it.
Yeah.
And one of the comments from Gary Merritt was, he said, we spoke over the weekend, and he said, one of the things they're doing to both build the trails, but also potentially to maintain them, is to find champions who will focus on trying to create, figure out trail segments from one definite point to another, but then also to start thinking about what's the long-range plan to maintain.
Right.
Not necessarily the paved infrastructure, but certainly addressing those other concerns. Yep.
And then one specific suggestion is in Comfort, US 87 up along along US 87, there's a huge wide right-of-way. We have a lot of walkers that go from there down to Comfort to the school. Perfect place for a shared use path. It's already being done. So please add that into your planning. We incorporated some of that concept into the interchange project there that was recently done. But I commend y'all for your vision. It's not going to be something that's going to happen. And it doesn't really, if you look at our mission, what we're called to do, it doesn't really address that. We're here to address future and current congestion. And this does it, but over a huge, long period of time. So I need the committee members to think about, okay, do we want to add this as a chapter, which is what I've been thinking before, or do we want to include it as a vision, as an appendix? I mean, we can, and don't answer now. I want y'all to think about that.
Should this be moved to the Parks Committee instead?
I don't think so, Brian, right?
Yes.
I don't think so. I think it fits with transportation, if for no other reason than the funding of this. One reason I think vehicular transportation gets preference is because they got this built-in automatic funding source that's called fuel taxes. And that doesn't come with a bicycle, And so part of the deal is how do you fund this stuff, both construction and maintenance? So I don't know.
I guess my one comment on that is that, most major auto manufacturers are shifting to electric. If you watch, the sales are almost as much as they can produce.
I know, we'll charge them by the mile. And maybe that's the thing.
Maybe so. My point being that paradigm's getting shattered as well.
Yeah.
And if I may,
okay, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, if y'all recall, y'all on the committee, we had a lot of crowdsourcing requests and issues that came to us involving pedestrian, bike, trails, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the purpose of that subcommittee was that we were getting a lot of these things that, yes, you're right, Mr. Chairman, some don't address congestion. Some do. Some do, it's not great presentation. You'll see in the document that it's not just all the future of trails, bells and whistles, but you'll see in the document that some of the policy statements are if you're going to be planning roadways, you need to be planning these too. If you're going to be developing standards for roadways, you need to develop standards for this too. This too, we don't know what it is yet. We're saying it could be all of this. In Fair Oaks, it could be horse trails. People riding the horses around, not just go-karts. It could be bridge structures going from neighborhood to neighborhood up here in North Bernie that get people across a creek, just like San Antonio's doing already. So you'll see that. San Antonio's allowing neighborhoods to come together to build pedestrian bridges that link the two neighborhoods only. All right? And I remember when they were built and when they were approved, there was a worry, the security worry. But now you just see kids hustling, bustling during the day, back and forth, back and forth. At night, some are clocked, some are coded, So those things are congestion. So I don't want to dump everything that the committee has. I'm not saying dump. Yeah. I don't want everything to be treated the same, because now is the time to plan. If we're going to be requesting, highly recommending to the county and the cities to start planning X, Y, and Z. Well, X, A, Y, B, and everything else. All these trails and sidewalks and these requirements need to be attached to those changes too.
What I'll offer this. I can take his layers or the circle around each of the schools and create one of these single-page documents. So, if you want it in that format, we can do that. Or if you want, this format in addition to the narrative or whatever, if you want it broken down a bit.
In sections.
Yeah, in
Sure.
sections or into specific areas, say 2 miles within Curington, we are suggesting these trails, or 2 miles within, whatever schools, and then Comfort. In Comfort, we're suggesting this. In Fair Oaks Ranch, we're suggesting this.
Maybe a place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's part of my deal too. It's like, we got to stop. Put the
Right.
pencils down.
Okay, so I think a real firm place to start is around your schools. Because we have so many areas where neighborhoods don't connect, and it pushes people in and out of that neighborhood onto the major roadways. It gives kids a way to walk to school, so they don't have your parents coming. So I think, in my mind, the top priority immediately is just around our schools.
Yeah, I see this as really, it's almost two plans. It seems like there is a element of this plan that does directly affect congestion and local mobility stuff and school traffic and getting people who want to bike to work and stuff like that. So that a lot of that is just expanding existing infrastructure and fixing that element. Then I see this large vision of this larger countywide, a lot of this greenfield construction, which I think it's important. When I first saw that, I did have a little bit of the, oh my God moment. And then I remembered the slide that you had at the beginning when you talked about this, the group that's doing the trail from Austin to San Antonio, which made me realize that that's a nonprofit organization, I'm guessing, a group of people working together, advocating for this trail network. They're doing it through voluntary means, without eminent domain. And in my opinion, that's what would be required for a larger network through the community to happen. I don't really envision the county as saying, okay, we're going to take this on, or the city or something. I think if there's a group that begins contacting landowners and talking about voluntary ways of doing stuff and really wants to try to find a trail network to happen, maybe you could meet with this, what's it called, the Springs something?
Great Springs Project.
Great Springs Project, and learn about, because you listed 25 different ways of building trails that do not require taxpayer funding and
They also have whole pages on funding, and I alluded to it in the document that was sent around. Yep.
The second
they did the homework.
tier of need would be to look at where our senior apartments are located and consider how we might be able to make safer paths for those folks to shop, go to the drugstore.
I would say that you're going to find those common elements, and they're going to be both senior and children's crossing. If you see a lot of the crowdsourcing, they serve both purposes.
Yeah.
So let's include them as priority
Well, do you
one.
think it's appropriate to recommend that that the group kind of, I don't want to say break it apart, but maybe that is appropriate to have sort of this more, the local safety and mobility related element, and then the kind of the visionary large kind of trail network element. Maybe there's some having those as two separate elements makes some sense.
What you just described is short-term and long-term.
Maybe
Right.
so.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's,
But I also think that this plan is largely meant to advise. My thought was it was largely meant to advise city and county as far as how to manage congestion, and a not-for-profit organization of people who want to encourage a larger trail network. Which I think I've for 100 years I've thought that the old number 9. Imagine if you could bike on old number 9 all the way up to the Bat Cave or something.
You'd have to come through my backyard.
See you soon. Does that old go?
There's vineyards.
I'll
there.
wave when I do that.
Well, you'll need a tasting room next.
yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So obviously there's complexities to all this.
So the way we approached it is that this was a first step. The members of our committee are actually inclined to continue to press forward with refinements and what have you. But I also think, though, that one of the best ways to do this is with thoroughfare planning. And so it's not just and I really, if it wasn't obvious, I was trying to impress upon you guys that this is legitimate mobility. This is not fluffy stuff. Oh yeah, we don't take it seriously. I take it seriously, and I think the future may
So
bear
by
that
thoroughfare
out.
planning, you mean it's included in development kind of agreements?
If Greenfield roads are going to be planned through thoroughfare planning, then Greenfield greenways should be planned as well. That's what I mean, and that's in our policy recommendations.
To that point, Ben, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. I hear from my friends in comfort to translate your enthusiasm, and I appreciate that. But in the bigger picture, and as applies to mobility, Comfort has 3 state highways, or 2 state highways and a ranch market road controlled by Textile. And as they do improvements, we look for opportunities that we can expand on those and leverage some dollars. And I appreciate Commissioner Durden's longtime involvement in that and connecting with the different design groups and who we can talk to the Textile, because they have a big project scheduled for 2024 that we can hopefully tie into this. But being aware of your presentation today, our number one issue related to that, as it has to do with not only vehicles but also pedestrians and biking, is safe in the safe crossings. And the busy point that not only do we have to get children from their home safely to school, we have our Golden Age Senior Center right on 27. And I just sent you a picture of one of our seniors crossing 27.
God bless them.
But we also have an active older adult group, including my wife, including a couple of my friends out here that get on their bike, they ride. Happy likes to put in 20,000 steps a day around the community. So having those pathways and trails are important within our community. And the 2 points that I would, as I thought about this, was first, community building is an attitude of watching for and preparing and cultivating partnerships and collaborations and watching for those moments to come up. And I can give some other examples we have in Comfort. And take advantage of those and keep moving those forward. And the other is, it requires leadership with staying power. And you talked about this nonprofit group, and part of it is knowing that our accomplishments, there are some short-term accomplishments moving that may come up in the next couple of years with the opportunity to rise, but many of them may be out 15 to 20 years. So I think
So when we looked at this plan from the standpoint of the big picture stuff that looks massive, we were thinking 100 years, But with the pace of development, it could be much less. And the point is to get ahead of development and make sure that we're reserving these spaces. And going back to your concern, sir, about who's going to maintain, we'll see what happens because the county changes, and so does county government, and so does county attitude, right? So that's first of all. But secondly, it goes back to that transect that I showed, that showed very rural going over to urban and all the different options. And we can certainly embrace solutions that are lower maintenance. And especially if we have routes that are sensible, that are low erosion, et cetera, and we do effective bridging, et cetera, then we should be able to facilitate a lower maintenance trail system.
Okay, I want to thank you all again for your very fine report. So much of what we do in transportation comes at it from sort of a negative perspective, like, oh, God, but this has a more positive aspect to it, visionary, if you will, changing things and maybe changing things for the better. So I commend y'all for that. I think my preference is that we somehow keep it discreet, whether it's a chapter or an appendix. I don't feel like I want to ask you to do more work now, but I think that maybe what we ought to do is recommend that the bodies that we present this to ask y'all to do more work as a committee. And that sets the stage for maybe how they want to be organized, how they want to engage with you, each of the individual, the county, the two cities. But we can talk about that next time. I would ask the committee members, I think this has been emailed to you. I'd like for you to review that, and I'd like for you, if you have comments, please send them. Ben, are you the recipient of comments? Please send them to Ben. My intent is that we would adopt whatever revised report that turns up 2 weeks from now, that we would adopt that at our next meeting on August the 2nd. So do your homework. And
so the other thing too, by the way, and that I don't want to get lost here, and I have it up on the screen, is policy recommendations. I don't see those as appendix items. We intend that to be considered for policy, for inclusion in our policies.
Would you like those to be included in the policy section?
Potentially, yes.
We could, and we could even add it. We talked about that, and if it did get split up, we could have section 5 after the roundabouts that talks about trails and some of the priorities of trails. We'll try to keep those succinct and short.
Well, I guess I wouldn't. There are some policy recommendations in here that I think are almost more systemic even than trails, as far as what the benefits that we see.
Well, we're not going to rewrite the whole report around you.
No, didn't ask you to do that. But let me finish.
Let's say it again.
Well, we can say it again, but let me clarify. We're not talking about rewriting the report. We're talking about amending it, which we can literally do in a vote. So I'm talking about reviewing policy, thinking about it, and seeing if we want to amend the policy section and not rewrite the rest of what's there.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we get done. And
I agree.
We get to a stopping point and that we hand this off. And then we can
send us something to look at?
Yeah, it should. Did you send it out?
It was with the agenda that I sent out yesterday. It's a link, but if you click on the link, it should download this presentation for you.
But don't you need to?
File size.
But you need a request. You need to send a request for approval.
Everyone should have access.
Oh, it was in my other email. Sorry, I'm special. I was locked out. I was so special.
If any committee member does not have a copy, if they will let me know by email or call me on my phone, and we'll get you a hard copy if you can't get to it.
Just one question. Ben, did Rich bring you the pedestrian recommendations that came out of our committee?
So Northern provided those, and we also actually have them in the GIS map, but they're so small relative to the scale of the county that you really have to zoom in to see them. We do account for them in a lot of the broad swath stuff we did, but to I think the point you're getting at, we're suggesting that those be adopted as that those are like priority number one, because I know you really thought those out.
And that also means you don't have to do it again.
Right.
Well, we were going to do short-term and long-term lists, and we decided not to have a list. But I do think we could take those pedestrian and school and senior citizen home and put them in a short-term list and just include them in the crowdsourcing list as approved projects.
That was my suggestion.
Yes.
Take that zoom in to where you're right around the school and highlight everything that is around the school that has been suggested and let that be.
And they were probably done twice, because I submitted, yeah.
Sometimes it's a trail over here and a trail up here and a crosswalk here, and rather than having that 3 suggestions, put it
We
in
put in one. Right.
So if you,
The list I sent you, put them in one.
So the way that we did do the ranking, if you look under priorities at the bottom of the page on the screen, complete trail-related recommendations from the projects committee, that's you all, Bitsy, I believe, and in comfort. So I'm making sure that we're paying very close attention to you all. And then plan and implement safe routes to school strategy, meaning let's get with BISD and plan that. Now, they favor that. My conversations with Rich, Henry Acosta, and I think it's John.
John Ramirez.
Yes. John was the one actually who brought up safe routes first to me. He thought it was a great idea. That's correct.
So he gets it directly from the bus drivers.
That's correct. So, and then establish a trail connection between Bernie and Fair Oaks was one of our first ones, just because ideally in the near term we would like to see a win in the trail world. But we're also saying above that we have the path forward, and we're seeing that as parallel, meaning these are priorities, right, that are actual projects. But the path forward is also about that long-range planning and getting everything that could perhaps dump into a thoroughfare plan, that kind of stuff. So it's all right here. It's in this document. I would hope you might take some time to take a look at it, at least skim it, if not read it. It's very visual.
Thank you.
All right, we're running a little bit behind time, but Bob and I felt like it was important that we bring that to a graceful conclusion. And thank you again for your presentation.
Yes.
One other item of business that I need to put before the committee. Right now, we have about, without the Trail Subcommittee report, we have about 40 pages worth of text. And we need to insert some graphics, and we need to make this a little more easier to read and something that people are not just going to say, and put it down. And I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not competent to do that. I've mentioned it to Ben. Ben sounded like, he did a good job on the trails, but I think he knows that there's a lot involved in that, and said, well, we can talk about it, but I don't know if I'm really up for that.
I thought we had some funding to have someone help us with that.
We do.
Okay.
We do. The question would be, how do we procure that, and how would the time frame involved? And what I wanted to bring up was, I mentioned this to my son, who has a construction business and a branding or graphic design business, same business. And he said, we will do that for you for free.
Whoa.
Now, because it's my son, I've had a lot of conflict of interest balls thrown at me.
You don't need one at this final hour.
Do I?
You don't need another at this final hour.
I don't care. But I think it's important that the committee, in the interest of full disclosure, give me some, know what the options are, and see if you have any concerns about that, if you want to proceed with that, if you have some other suggestions. But we need to get that moving forward one way or the other. So,
And Don, is the main intent to try to remove duplication and just kind of like not lose any of the content, but really just kind of edit and refine some of the text?
it's simply to add, no content change. It's adding pictures.
Professionally put it together.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a theme, if you have a border, or where the page.
Do everything we can to keep the document moving from hand to hand. It's worth
Right.
reading. It's
Right.
Doesn't look like 17
You mean
different
just make it
documents.
pretty and put pictures in it and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what the conflict of interest is there, unless you're just like, you've given up on this plan, you're going to get him to intentionally make it really bad looking.
Well, the question is, have you seen other documents that he's done that with? And do they rise to a good standard?
I have not seen that.
Ben is paging through the Great Springs plan, and it's full of pretty pictures and colors and stuff.
now, but
But we do have a lot of data in ours that we want to maintain the integrity of. We're not going to edit one word of anything that we've approved. I went through it at Don's request and just made margin notes of when you read a paragraph, oh, that clearly could use a graphic to help interpret it, explain it. But the words are going to remain.
Could we give them this document as an example? I mean, this is just, I've not seen this before, but it really is it's beautiful. Yeah.
In fact, I'll be glad to patch him together with the subcommittee.
As long as he gets to put his logo on, I mean.
And he did say he'd like to just have the credit for their effort.
Sometimes you got to ask, but don't
Sure.
put his company's name
Anybody
on it.
interested in doing that?
Okay with doing something
Yeah.
at that level.
But do we
That
want
elevates
to take
free.
shipping and everything, or?
I'll throw my name in the hat to work with him if that's desired in some way, to wing from a
I think you
non-father.
all know each other, don't you?
We know each other, yeah. I like him. He's a good guy, so might as well.
Do you still want to work with him?
I'll have a,
Does he like you?
as long as we can have a little, beer every now and then.
All right, well, I'm going to proceed on that basis. Anybody else want to?
You require a motion for that?
That's, yeah.
As long as it's.
Second.
All right.
Motion by Gary, second by Bob.
Any objection? Okay, we'll do that. Anybody else want to help Ben?
Jonah's going to ride through your backyard while they're
Okay.
working on it.
Actually, he's
On
doing
his
it
bike.
outside
I'll
my
help with the
bedroom
last
window.
part of
But
Okay,
Pedestrian.
you'll be in the background, essentially.
No, not with the final document. With
it could be target
Get it
practice.
to August 2nd. This thing.
All right.
Do it. Well,
Our last
talk.
opportunity for public comment is now, and so we'll start with the people in the audience. Anybody have?
My name's Brian Boyder from the Comfort area, and where do I start? First, I'll thank the county for keeping my taxes low. But here's the but part. Funding for the Greenway, for the Guadalupe Greenway, run a bond issue and I'll vote for it. What I'm saying is I'm willing to put my money up for that, and I bet a lot of people in the county would too. And the idea of using I hate to do it this way. I didn't have much time to think about this, but the idea of using a nonprofit to manage, develop on our greenways and things like that, it kind of shows a lack of leadership from the county. Kerr County has parks and greenways down the river, and I doubt they did it with a nonprofit. The city of San Antonio has greenways. That wasn't done with a nonprofit. I used to live in Austin, and they have great trails, and none of that was done with a nonprofit. It was leadership from the government, and so I'm just saying perhaps you might want to rethink that. I see a problem here, and Mr. Durden pointed it out, and that is this is a transportation committee, and their focus is mobility. But a greenway down the Guadalupe is not a mobility path. I've also looked at the county park plan, we'll call it a plan, and there's a section there that's labeled linear park. But there's nothing there. There are no linear parks in the park plan because they're supposed to be part of the transportation committee's plan. So there's a problem here. If you're the transportation committee, that's not a transportation function, and so now you're screwed. Okay, and I just want to one more point, and that is I like Brad's presentation. Said there was $83 million spent, in bike tourism. I think a lot of that was mine. I'm an avid biker. I used to be an avid marathoner, and I marathoned all over the country. I now am I've biked all over the country. When I go, my wallet goes with me, and I spend a lot of money. In 2 weeks, every year, my wife and I, we go to Europe. You know what we do? We go biking. Same thing. I spend a lot of money going to Europe to bike, and there's nothing here in this county. There's no place to bike except down the road. And you saw how what those roads are like. They're barely more than one lane, and you're barreling down. You're trying to come down a hill. Maybe there's a curve, and there's a truck coming the other direction down the middle of the road. So I mean, that's an everyday occurrence riding in Kendall County. So with that, I will close. I've done enough damage. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer. Ms. Gerhart?
Hi, everyone. As we get closer to the end of this committee's decisions and the report, I just want to make sure that everybody considers the lines on the map. Now, I'm not referencing it because of the vision of the trails. I did notice, though, that it does mimic some of the transportation lines, which I do have an issue with some of them. Yeah. And however, I myself have my property on the market. I have been asked almost every single showing, and it is a detriment to me that of somebody purchasing it, even though it has been made clear to me by several members of this committee that it should have no effect and that nothing's written in stone and it could be long term or there won't be enough money and everything else. But when you actually put a line on the map and in reference to like the votes, property, they need to be called. If a line or any of this report includes a line on the map that is not currently an existing road for some sort of a enhancement or improvement, those people need to be notified. And I think it was established that was going to happen, and I just hope that that does not fall by the wayside because it's a long-term project, or it's just an opinion, or it's probably never going to happen. It's just, it is directly affecting me. I don't know who else it is directly affecting, but I can tell you it is directly affecting me. And it's extremely stressful. So when you do put these lines on the map, it can affect people's, lives. And unless you're ready to spend money to buy property, if decisions make people unhappy, then I think those people deserve the basic respect to be spoken to, explain the situation very clearly, the position of whether it's from the committee or from the city or whoever it is. It would just be greatly appreciated because there's a lot of just mixed data out there. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhart. Anybody? Mr. Zinsmeister.
This will be short, okay? I appreciate your comments, okay? When I saw the presentation, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but what came to me automatically is we're just dreaming up another way to spend taxpayer money. So I appreciate your comments about, how we're going to fund this going forward, okay? Truth and disclosure. I turned 65 this year. So if next year you guys want to spend money on this, I'm okay with that. 'Cause I'm okay? But I'm sure the other taxpayers in the county, would appreciate our restraint on spending money. Again, I do. It's a noble cause, and I agree with it. I like the idea. People from the outside, San Antonio, come here, enjoy the trails and everything. They bring their own water to drink and then go home. So that's all I wanted to say.
Could it be the Maxie Zinsmeister bicycle tollway?
Exactly.
Ms. Hodges.
First of all, I want to thank the committee. It was a wonderful committee to be a part of. My name is Pamela Hodges. I live in Kendall County, about 3 miles out from the city of Bernie. But I am a Kendall County resident. The committee, like I said, was a fun committee to work with. It was very cohesive, very forward-thinking. And I think when you read a lot of those policy statements, you'll see that they deal a lot with county development. Because most of these trails, most of this will happen as land is sold, as land is developed, and to request that developers develop the way that Kendall County wants to be developed. so that those thoroughfares that go through those acres of land that they're developing and putting small tracks on, that those properties have open spaces, that those properties have trails, that they have thoroughfares that are pleasant to go through to those homes. So I think that the committee worked very hard to make certain that no one's property was going to be condemned, no one's property was going to be affected in any way but positive, with development around them that considers the rural lifestyle, that considers the fragile aquifer that we all depend upon. Because quite frankly, there's one statement in there that says we all depend on the Trinity Aquifer, that essentially the Guadalupe Basin fills the water that we drink that we're importing from Canyon, and that water then is returned to the aquifer, to the San Antonio River Basin actually, so that we all have adequate water supplies, so that we don't have rooftops and impervious cover, that we have a rural hill country atmosphere that we moved here for, that it's not being taken away from us. So all I wanted to say, please do read the report. It was well intended, and I can't think of anything in there except that most of those trails are installed by developers. Most of those trails will be homeowners association probably that responsibility. And wherever possible, connecting trails to the equine center or county parks. Those are county roads, and you're maintaining them anyway, and in maintaining them in a way that is attractive and practical. So, thank you.
Ms. Hudson, may I ask you a question or two?
Yes, sir.
You have some experience with things called conservation developments, is that right?
We tried that in the early 90s, and the county was not quite ready for that yet. But Hays County, I've been following them. In April, they produced a report directed toward changing county, the way that county and developers interact with conservation design. So then you have more open space. I think that the economic advantages and the environmental advantages are certainly something that we should look at. And they have produced a report that quantifies that. I think that it's something that I would like to recommend that the county have a workshop and invite GAP Strategies, the people that did the study, invite them to come and explain what conservation design is.
Well, I think my own limited knowledge about it is that it meshes very well with what the committee has talked about, separate use paths, and it is a way to forego or mitigate the cost to the taxpayer that Mr. Zinsmeyer mentioned, because if a developer incorporates this into his development, the community not only gets the open space, the homeowners get the smaller lots that they're responsible for maintaining, the small lots that are dense together, but they're surrounded by these open areas. I think that the Kendall County that the rest of us enjoy may last a little bit longer. So, Commissioner Elkins, why don't you and I tag team and see if we can't get a presentation on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Lance Kyle again?
I'm sorry.
That was, I mean, Lance Kyle again. Okay. Wasn't a question.
Just one observation. Before we start inviting San Antonio to party here in Kendall County on these future trails, let's just remember that hasn't worked out too well at Bernie Lake and Dickens on Main. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle.
And you got Zoom folks too still.
Anybody else in the audience? Okay, we'll turn to the people on the Zoom call. Let's see. I don't see any hands raised. Ms. Rudd, Ms. McCarthy, Mr. Adelstein.
I have a comment.
Okay, there you go, Tom Adelstein.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I have tech issues here. Two quick comments. I've had some problems with garbled sound. It might be my Wi-Fi signal. I agree with what I heard about the lines on the map impacting the residents' ability to sell or market their property. I know you guys have worked very hard and considering this issue, but going forward, please remember that these people, their lives, their livelihoods, their money, their investment could be at stake if I was buying property and there was any kind of record of a line on the map. I would probably not buy that property. If I had a line going through my property, it would probably keep me up every night. So I know you guys are doing your best. I appreciate that, but as we present this report, that line does impact someone's life, and it has a very bad impact. You may as well just empty their bank account, as far as I'm concerned. One last question. On the vote to, I believe it said reject, item 33. I did not hear the vote. Could you tell me what the vote was? My sound was off at that time.
It was 9-1.
To reject?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rudd. Tom, your hand's up.
Thank you, Don. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that I enjoyed Ben and his committee's report. And I'm an old guy and I'm a car guy. And at the long beginning of the Transportation Committee, I might have been kind of soft on other transportation methods. But it just makes me remember that the narrow roads, wide nodes, I didn't know anything about. And when all that research came in, it was really handy. And it looks like we've used a lot of that in some of the recommendations. So I would just ask the committee to keep an open mind to what Ben and his committee have done. There's a lot of us old folks on the committee and a lot of young folks whose futures are here. We should be thinking of that too. And I don't mean to be pejorative to those on the committee, because I thank the committee for all the time and effort they put in, and to being open to reports like Ben's committee and Professor Venny and others. So it's really kudos to all, but thank you, Don. That's it.
Thank you, Tom.
So I just want to say thank you as well, but also, yeah, this committee was awesome, and I want to thank them. I was so grateful that Pam stepped up and did that, and I want to double down on that. It was a really forward-thinking, heartfelt committee. And, there's that saying about, those, and I'm paraphrasing, but, those who plant a tree that they'll never sit in the shade of understand what it means to live. And I got to say, that was absolutely this committee. And we're fully aware that we may never see a lot of pieces of this happen, but still the goal is to serve everybody, including future generations.
Very good. Closing comments, Gary?
I just want to add my thanks to everybody on your subcommittee and all the work. This was a powerful presentation. Your passion certainly showed, but so did the information and the messaging. And regardless of the age of the subcommittee members, what came through to me was a generational handoff of conceptual definitions of mobility and lifestyle. And that takes perseverance. It takes taking it to the parks plan as well as the transportation plan about 100 times. It takes a lot by a lot of people to turn the ship of state. So keep it up and good job. Excellent report.
I just wanted to add that I wonder if some of this could be simplified or included. I didn't read the whole policy recommendations, but it's a pretty bold idea that I kind of learned about today. This idea that the county, we've talked about it before, the county adopting a thoroughfare plan, and the county adopting a thoroughfare plan for non-automobile hike and bike trails and stuff that puts developers in the position of actually having to fund and make sure these trails go through, I think is a bold idea that could have really long-lasting impacts that avoid some of the problems that were mentioned about taxpayer funding and stuff. So I think it's a neat idea.
Marlon? Ben, I hate to do this, but you get the last word. A brief last word.
I want to actually, here's what I'll say. I want to say, first of all, I'm sorry that I didn't bring this to us sooner, so we had more time, number one. But number two is that I didn't present this, because I've been thinking about this since we started, and that I didn't bring sort of this new concept. And I have a bias toward new solutions, frankly, because, things evolve and new methods come about, and I have a bias toward embracing them. Stormwater management so that we take the pollutants out of the water. In this case, trying to solve mobility for the whole community and create a quality of life outcome. So I'm sorry I didn't talk about it sooner, because I do think they're values that we really should have been embracing all the way. I think we all care, but I wish I'd named them sooner so we could embrace them all the way along. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all in the audience for attending, and those online. We'll meet again in 2 weeks. We are adjourned.
Ready, break.